Hi guys, it's Nick here from Hidden Valley Bushcraft, and today we are going to be talking about Britain's 10 most poisonous or deadly plants. My first one I found, giant hogweed. Now the giant hogweed, Heracleum mantegazzianum, okay, is not natural to the UK. Okay, so I'm just trying to gain access down to a bit of riverbank without going swimming. And here I have in front of me, look at the size of this. Guys, I'm just under 6 foot and this thing is already getting on for a good couple of feet above me. Now, what's interesting about this particular one behind me, and I'm going to show you another one so that we can talk about their identifying features, is purely down to its incredible size. And you can see the umbelliferous head, because this is in the same family as the carrot, the parsnip, sweet Cicely angelica, and some of the other ones we're going to cover today. Okay, this is in the Apiaceae family and is a monster. Just look at the thickness next to my hand of this stem. This is absolutely massive. If this is left, this will go on to get up to reportedly 5.5 meters tall. And this particular type of hogweed, it has purple colorations on the stem, and usually much more than this. There's this purple mottling effect against the light green that you see. The leaves are quite aggressively jagged, and I'm wearing gloves, and rightly so, because the sap from this will cause absolutely horrendous blistering and burning. It'll make your skin photosensitive. That means anytime you're out in sunlight and your skin is not covered, you could be in big trouble. If you do suspect that you've brushed up against this stuff, or it's been crushed and you've somehow come into contact with it, what you want to be doing is covering that skin from daylight straight away and heading off to A&E to get checked out. The next thing you want to do, tell your local council. Now, to try and give you an idea, I'm going to escape this little garden area and I'm going to show you a regular hogweed. Okay, so here's a regular hogweed growing in a garden. Okay, and so here you see a very similar leaf pattern. Much smaller, stem, green and hairy the whole way along, but none of that purple coloration happening there. Here we are down by the riverbank, and I have got an example there, that purple mottling on the stem, and this thing is absolutely gigantic. So we are back now here at the HVB main camp, and we're just going to whiz round our section of the riverbank next to show you our next plant. If you were perhaps taking up wild swimming or getting into wild swimming and you weren't aware of this, this is why I'm making this part of the video. The plant I'm about to show you is rather benign looking. It doesn't have any special coloration which is going to tip you off or indicate that it's especially poisonous in any way, shape or form, and that's what's so dangerous about it. Okay guys, so what I'm going to show you now is Hemlock waterdrop wart, okay, and its Latin is Oenanthe crocata. Now, this is especially lethal because it contains a cocktail of about several different types of alkaloid, which, unlike an alcohol, is not recognized by your body's own renal system. So you can't break it down, you don't have the tool set. If you get any of the sap from this plant here in your bloodstream, perhaps if you were mowing or strimming down by a riverbank and you got some of the sap in your eye and you didn't have goggles on, okay, that could actually get ingested. That's going to be not good news for you. This will literally kill in about 3 hours, start to finish, with no cure. You definitely don't want to go ahead and eat it and ingest it that way. It's also lethal to animals. It's in every single ditch, wet waterway, dried up riverbed, streams, estuaries. It's everywhere in the UK. It's been around for an awful long time. Its identifying features, when we look closely, to me it looks rather like celery stalks with a parsley leaf. You'll see what I mean. So very benign looking, straight green stems coming up, always with its feet in water. A very parsley looking leaf structure, which is rather apt because it is in fact in the parsley family. So we look at the umbels again, it's going on to create those umbrella type flowers, and if we look on the other side of the riverbank here, you'll see many of them coming into bloom already. Now, the big danger, obviously, if you're wild swimming and you're new to it and you're climbing in and out of the water, okay, you might even use a handful of this to pull yourself out of the riverbank. That would be a big no-no. So guys, if you're into wild swimming or if your kids are playing on the riverbanks, have a good look around for this first, identify it, just tell them to stay clear of it. It's as simple as that. One of the two types of hemlock I'm going to show you today, because the next one is going to be hemlock as well. One of these two was actually used to kill Socrates, the ancient playwright, and we only know, as we leave this stuff here, we only know of what he went through because he chose to have a scribe at his bedside. Okay, and there were feelings of euphoria and then massive fitting, dizziness, and he died completely locked on, cramped up really tight. And so that's where it's thought the expression comes from, the sardonic smile, as in he looked at me with a sardonic smile. I'm going to keep saying this the whole way through the video. If you're interacting in the outdoors or you're just getting into the outdoors, this information could quite possibly save a life. So I'm now on the hunt for hemlock. Because of the way this stuff grows and what we tend to teach here and the groups we work with, we've done our very best to dig out most of the hemlock that we can. Just as I come into here, you can see it's a bit like land of the Triffids. And just in this top part of the field is this deadly hemlock of which I just spoke about. And this one is different. This one's Conium maculatum. So we're going to have a closer look at its identifying features. This one also contains that horrendous cocktail of chemicals. So I'm going to pick one of the larger, more established ones, as it's showing much more of the more typical growth habits you'd expect to see. Now in terms of height, this is already taller than I am, but it's not going to get much further than this. We're going to start to see these umbelliferous heads once again. If you look closely, you'll see the purple coloration on the stem and that purple mottling, which is very similar to the giant hogweed that I showed you just before, and also quite clearly says, don't come near me, don't touch me. Can you see that purple all the way along here? Now when we look at the leaf structure, the leaves are very fine, much more the sort of arrangement that you'd expect to see on the carrot or the wild carrot, but this often gets mistaken for cow's parsley. Again, absolutely lethal and would probably kill in about 3 hours with no cure known to us at the moment. So again guys, if you are interacting in the outdoors, if you're out on a dog walk, you're hiking, if the dog runs into a patch of this and your children are following them in, things to think about guys. So there we go. So that was Conium maculatum hemlock. On to our next deadly plant. Okay, so for plant number 4, I have travelled all the way across the village to see some of our friends who have the most incredible ornamental garden, and that's because it was really tricky to find a working example. And what I have down here is known as monk's hood or wolfsbane. This is aconite. Okay, this is more likely to be Aconite carmichael, or Aconite napellus is the wild version. And what we're talking about here is this plant. As you can see, the leaf structure and the leaf shape is incredibly toxic. Okay, and this is actually a contact poison. This is why I've got the gloves on for this video. This little plant has had many different names throughout history. The most notable one is monk's hood, because when it comes into flower later this year, you'll see this drooping hood, very much like the veiled hood of a monk, and it'll be a deep royal blue, almost purpley royal blue colour. But it's the leaf structure you really want to be taking a heed of and keeping the kids away from. It's dark green. I mean, it's only literally up to pretty much just above my knee here, and it grows in clusters like this, and it almost has a multiple belled flower effect, and you see many of them drooping in a stand together. You can find this in wild patches of land. Sometimes you'll find it on the edge of Brecon Beacons and places like that here in the UK. Steer well clear guys. Okay, so just handling it with a bare hand on the skin, okay, it's a contact poison that will go in, and you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. You certainly don't want to get any of this into a cut, and you definitely don't want to ingest any of this because this can be fatal. There is actually another one. So number 5 we're going to go to is also in this walled garden. And it might be that you're out with the family, you know, interacting, and you're in one of these beautiful establishments like this, and one of the kids reaches out and touches something. This is number 5, and also found growing in the wild, but an awful lot more in people's gardens specifically, is this Euphorbia next to me here. Now there are a number of different types. This is also known as a spurge. You can get a wood spurge, a sun spurge. There's many different variants. The one I tend to see is Euphorbia amygdaloides, but the way that this can damage you quite badly again is because it contains an incredibly caustic sap which will cause really bad burns if it's knocked. So you can see on the edge of this little stone steps here, if you maybe had a toddler playing here or something like that and they were to snap, and they do snap relatively easy. If you were to snap this stuff here, you can see this milky sap coming out. Okay, and I've got permission to damage this one today, and you can see that milky sap there. Okay, and that milky sap is incredibly, I'm going to get some on my gloves so you can see it, incredibly caustic. Okay, this stuff really burns. Now What this was actually used for in ancient times is you might go to the apothecary, I can never say it, apothecary. You go see the doc, okay, back in the day, and you might have a boil or a wart or something on your skin, and they'd give you a solution of this to burn it off. Okay, that's how badly this stuff can burn you. It's normally a two-part deal. In the first part of its life, it grows, it's just got this small head like this, and again this one's going to get broken off soon, and you can see that white sap oozing out of there. And then in the second part of its life, it'll start to push out a flower head or something similar to this. Now there's many variants of this, and as I look around this garden, I've actually seen a couple of different types, but it's one to watch. Okay, anything that's got that milky poison acidic sap is a big one to avoid, guys. Let's move on then to number 6. Okay, this next one I've literally just pulled over, and I'm hoping many Britons will be able to identify. Okay, so literally, let's put the handbrake on. This one here is in fact the foxglove, and you can see the arrangement. So there is this tall stemmed or tall bodied plant with this arrangement of beautifully coloured little pinky purpley bells. Okay, and you'll quite often find bees hiding up inside here as well. Now what's particularly interesting in this particular plant is if I was to pick a leaf, okay, this isn't so much a contact poison. As I've spoken about this one in the past when I've talked about primrose, okay, and its ability when it's young to look a little bit like a primrose if you were new to foraging. So what this does, Digitalis purpureum, is it is an inhibitor. The chemicals inside this inhibit the brain's message to the heart to continue beating, and it has actually had a place in medicine historically, and some of the organic chemical components in this have in fact been synthetically reproduced and are still used today as a digitoxin in certain medicine for people with heart issues. That said, this wild variant out here shouldn't be touched, ingested, chewed on or gone near. Just leave it as a pretty looking plant in the outdoors. Okay, it's mega common, it's everywhere here in the British Isles and the UK. I'd love to hear if you know of any more of it growing around the world, what colour variants you have if you know this plant. Okay, we know it as foxgloves. Let us know in the box. And on that note, if you're new to the channel, I'm Nick Goldsmith from Hidden Valley Bushcraft, and today I'm taking you guys through my top 10 deadly or poisonous plants here in the UK. Let's head on over to plant number 7. So here's another great example of what I was just showing you guys with the foxglove, but I wanted to come here and show you this more established plant so that we can learn to recognize what the leaves look like. So the leaves themselves are very lanceolate and pointed. They've always got a point on the tip or on the end, and a raised prominent vein on the back that you can see on show there. Now what's particularly interesting is these veins that come off the sides here. They don't come off very horizontally, they're much more in line with that primary vein. Okay, so they're arranged much more vertically than say something like the primrose. And here's a great example. You can see the colour is very similar to that of a young primrose coming through. So this is a foxglove, that's what I've just showed you. Okay, so this is just a leaf in its lighter colour, and then right next to it here is a perfectly edible little piece of primrose. So you can kind of see, because they share that tone, and it also has a raised rib, how you could get this wrong. Now the difference with the primrose is that these veins are arranged much more horizontally going away from the plant, whereas if we have a look at the back of this one, you can see they go much more in line. If I put the two together to show you, you can see the difference there. Okay, so on the left hand side is the primrose, on the right hand side is the Digitalis, is the foxglove. And those veins coming away and then going much more in line, whereas these ones are going much more horizontally. The primrose will never have a point, it's always a blunted or rounded tip. The thing that catches people out when they're learning to forage is this colour. Readily grabbing away at young primrose leaves and can get that wrong, and that could be a deadly mistake to make. We're in the woodland now, and now we're thinking much more of in a sort of nursery, woodland, kindergarten context, and that being something that I have a bit of experience in. So there are of course things that you're going to come into contact with down here in the woods. The children are interacting and playing with all the time, and it's about monitoring that, helping them to identify and learn about these things from a young age, and really putting them in good stead moving forward. So if you are out for a day in the woods with the family, this is the sort of thing you're going to want to be looking out for. Okay, so here's a prime example. I'm walking down through the woodland on a little path here, and never much more than a couple of feet to the left or the right, I might start to come across something like this. Okay guys, so this is Arum and maculatum, or lords and ladies, also known as the cuckoo pipe plant. And what's particularly interesting about this, and it's lobed, if you look, it's sort of a lanceolate pointy shape, and its lobes here. It doesn't really grow very high off the floor. That's not to say that it's not got some danger about it, but in particular in the later stages, and you can see this leaf is somewhat past its best, it starts to grow this little stem with these seeds. Now these seeds will start to go a sort of an orange colour, bright orange colour, as they kind of emerge from these seed pods. These are, for some reason, extremely inviting and enticing to small children who are wandering up something like a path like this. Obviously you've got a bench there, you might sit down as a family, have a picnic or whatever, so just be wary guys, okay? So keep them away from this. I mean, it does look a little bit, to a child, a bit like green sweet corn, so one to watch out for. Now this, if ingested, much more of a sort of stinging, burning sensation. Contains calcium oxalate crystals that block the pores on your kidneys. All round it's a nasty. If you do manage to ingest any of this, you won't ingest a lot of it, because it's just an instant reaction of no, absolutely no. A bit like you drop your sandwich in the sand on a day at the beach, you'll know what I'm on about, that gritty under your teeth. Definitely avoid at all costs. So that's Arum maculatum, lords and ladies. Another common face to many of our woodlands here in Britain is the presence of this here. Now this is dog's mercury, also known as Mercurialis perennis. This is in fact quite toxic, should definitely not be ingested. It's not so much of a, if you touch it you're going to be poisoned type of thing, but it's much more of a, you definitely don't want to get involved with it or ingest any. And because it's so close to the edge, growing quite often in many of our woodlands, it's all too easy for a small person to be picking away at this, rubbing it in their fingers, and then perhaps put their fingers in their mouth. So one to keep an eye out for, mums and dads. If we have a little closer look, you should see it has like a little flower spike, but I think that is pretty much almost done with. There's one here, you can just make out that small spike on top. Okay, but it's a leaf arrangement, and it is only about 30 centimeters off the floor, and it's always densely bunched in like this. Another little fact about dog's mercury is it is in fact semi-ancient woodland indicator for most parts of the UK. There we go, that's what's that now, 8, 2 more to go. Right, we're going to head over to a farm and I'm going to show you the last couple. So guys, I'm up here on a working farm here in the UK. I've come here because it's usually actually in the direct area around on the outskirts of the farmyard that you're going to find all kinds of escaped plant species and things that have come in off of tyres of perhaps some of the machinery that's being used here and kind of escaped into nearby bushes and hedges. Now, right next to me is in fact another deadly plant, okay, and this is number 9, and this is Atropa belladonna, which is deadly nightshade. Now when we look at the deadly nightshade, it looks rather disarming, and when we take a closer look we start to see these purple flowers with these little yellow bits in the middle coming through, and the actual leaf pattern itself is quite distinctive. You can kind of see that kind of pointed arrowhead with these 2 little lobes down near the bottom here. There's enchanter's nightshade, there's a whole bunch of nightshades. If it looks remotely or can be mixed up with something else, don't risk it. So this has actually been used in the past, form of a tincture for ladies, and we're talking hundreds of years ago, used to give themselves eye drops of this stuff to dilate the pupils of their eyes and make them more attractive. Why you'd want to do that, I don't know. It goes on to produce these lovely little clusters of blackberries. Obviously these are highly attractable to young children, especially if you've been teaching your kids about blackberry eating and, you know, that sort of thing. And every year there are reported cases of poisoning with this stuff. Highly toxic and potentially fatal. So that's number 9, and that is Atropa belladonna, deadly nightshade. So this is ragwort. Now ragwort's a bit of a nightmare, and you can get different types, okay, and you can get different types of leaf that come on here, but essentially it's a yellow flower that opens out, and you'll see these arranged all the way throughout the field. You can actually absorb it through your skin, so make sure you're wearing gloves. This is also dangerous to livestock. Now, what's interesting is it's not so much while it's wet and green like this, but when it's been dried up and it's found its way into dried food for animals, later on or the next year. By dried weight, it's more potent because it hasn't got the moisture for the animal to be able to dilute it and break it down so much, because this becomes really quite deadly. So yeah, so this is Senecio jacobea ragwort. It's everywhere. Certainly any farmer will be able to tell you about this and to avoid it. I'd say that's my top 10 things that you are most commonly going to come into contact with here in the British outdoors. Hopefully that sheds some more light and answered some more questions. If I haven't covered something enough, let me know in the box below. Thank you so much for supporting our YouTube journey. I know I keep saying this, but it really is important. This is everything to us. So thank you, thank you, thank you.